Thank you very much for really inviting me, and I'm sorry that I was not able to make it the previous meeting because of the schedule conflict. I hope the conference is going well. So I believe that I have only 20 minutes plus, I believe, Q&A section. In that time, I am going to be concentrating on a specific point, a specific chapter in this very rich history of Sabatianism. I assume that you know Sabatianism. I take it for granted. Otherwise, I need to spend a lot of time on history. Though I'll say very few things for those who have not much idea about history of Sabatianism, and then I will move to the main subject, which is the language of the liturgical language of Sabatianism. Let me share my screen with you quickly. Okay, here's the thing. The title actually suggests my main argument. There I'm talking about Turkification of the Kabbalistic language of Sabatian Donme tradition. And the main argument will be that Sabatians or aka Donmes began to adopt Turkish as part of their liturgical and Kabbalistic universe as well as daily language from the 18th century onward. So that's going to be the main argument, the Turkification of this mystical, philosophical, and liturgical language. For those who, again, have a little or no background in Sabatianism, in a very succinct manner, I could tell you that Sabatianism was a movement created or initiated by a man whose name was Shabtai, a man from the Ottoman Empire who was born in Smyrna in 1626 and claimed himself as the Messiah. And at some point he was forced to convert to Islam and then lived another 10 years as a Jewish Muslim Sabbatian messianic character. In the meantime, he created his own movement and followers, and he dies in 1676 toward the end of the 17th century. And after that, we see the birth of a community which came to be known as Sabbatians, or in Turkish, Donmes. Donmes or Donme literally means like turncoats or turning inside out, but more symbolically in Ottoman Turkish, it means a convert. Okay, so we now have a converted community. But the problem of this converted community, or not problem, but the interesting thing about this converted community was that they were a messianic / mystical / philosophical community which survived along the within the border or between the border of Islam and Judaism. It was neither completely Jewish nor completely Islamic. It was a third entity. Definitely extracting things from both traditions, both religions, as well as, of course, even Christianity and all other mystical traditions, but mainly from Judaism and Islam and their mystical traditions. Again, now we see the emergence of a community, mainly concentrating in Salonika, in today's Greece. Back then it was an Ottoman major metropolitan city, and Istanbul. These two cities were like main centers of this community, but more so probably Salonika, which was known also as like the Jerusalem of the Balkans. Okay, so now we do have a community there, headed by so many different leaders. But the first interesting observation that we need to make here is that it was a community, communal experience rather than an individual experience. This is important, especially for the Marrano scholars who are trying to compare Sabatianism and Marranos, as you know, another crypto-Jewish community from Portuguese and Spanish experience in the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries. But Marrano experience was mostly individual, while we do have a Donme experience, which is mostly communal, meaning that there are leaders, there are communities and leaders of communities, there are gatherings, and then all other practices associated with community. And if you are a community, of course, communal needs different than the individual needs. And one of the needs of that community was, of course, rituals, right? The rites and rituals and other practices. Especially devotional literature became part of this practice, that they had to come together, for example, on special nights and sing hymns, and then do some other ritual practices, including magic. So we do have this community now there, but another interesting thing, of course, the community, starting actually from the get-go, was divided into three subgroups, despite the fact that we refer to Donmes as an umbrella term to all the believers or practitioners. There were indeed three sub-communities who indeed survived in the 18th, 19th, 20th, and even 21st century. So we do have now like three subgroups under the umbrella of Donmes. This is important because in the long run, they are going to develop some unique practices to their own for their own communities. And from the get-go again, one other thing that we see is that music became part of this communal gatherings, and rituals without music cannot be, of course, imagined. And I think first level of Ottomanization was happening again at a communal ritualistic level, and I'm really concentrating on only that. Otherwise, the topic is extremely big and complex, and I have a whole book devoted to different aspects of this phenomenon. Here again, I concentrate on language and rituals. Okay? So the music in that regard, and Ottoman music actually became part and parcel of this ritualistic universe. And we know from other studies that even before the Sabbatean experience, Jews already have been utilizing Ottoman melodies while they're singing their songs and hymns. The way it works is just so simple. They were choosing some Turkish or Ottoman stanzas, some songs and some music to set the tone of the main Jewish song or hymns, secular or religious by the way. Okay, so in a way, Ottoman melodies were there, but the thing is, since they did not have musical instruments widely used in those times, they were using simply vocal voices and songs and some Ottoman hymns as an opening sentence, one or two sentences, and then they started to sing their own songs in Hebrew or Ladino. Okay, so Hebrew and Ladino basically were the main languages, but Ottoman Turkish was slowly creeping into Sabbatian rites and rituals through music. Okay, so these are some of the opening sentences, opening Ottoman stanzas and hymns for those Jewish and Sabbatian hymns. I'm not going to translate them all for you, but they are mainly hymns, intentionally chosen from the hymns which are talking about beloved, about love, about yearning for the lover. But here, the symbolism, of course, is when I say lover and beloved and whatnot, all the symbolism in this context is referring to Messiah. The last one here, for example, it reads like Biz sana üftadeyiz ey şahı hubbu cihan, could be translated as we are deeply in love with you, oh, the king of the love of the universe. Okay, so I mean, you see here clearly a reference to the Messiah, and again, that stanza is in Turkish, and this can be an opening stanza for a Ladino hymn in those ritual gatherings, which is setting the tone, musical tone, as well as emotional tone for the gathering or for that ritual, almost ecstatic practice. I can say more about it, but again, time is just so limited. But the music, in short, music was the earliest form of, in a way, like Turkification of those rituals back in 17 and 18 and also 19th centuries. Here, another interesting concept that we need to also keep in mind is the concept of Donme Kabbalah. It's a term, I believe, that I coined in my own book. And to me, this is one of the least known, unknown would be a bit like too pretentious to say, but I would say that it is one of the least known chapter in the history of Kabbalah. Donme Kabbalah to me is somewhat unique and interesting. It brings lots of new elements to the Jewish Kabbalah or like mysticism in general. But today, still, we are far from understanding the whole phenomenon in a very systematic fashion. And the Donme Kabbalah, the people or the elements which contributed in the formation of the Donme Kabbalah was, of course, Shabtai Tzvi himself, but it went beyond him. I mean, today when I say Donme Kabbalah, this is much more complex than like saying the Sabbatean Kabbalah, because in there we have Shabtai Tzvi himself. Of course, Nathan of Gaza is there. The Cardoza, Abraham Cardoza is there, like his ideas there. Plus, the elders of the early Donme community, including Jacob Philosophos, one of the earliest leaders of the Donme community in Salonika. And later on, in the coming centuries, we are going to have some more Donme leaders, and then those experiences mixed or informed by Ottoman Sufism, and those ideas are going to also be added to this corpus, and we are going to have a new and unique phenomenon, which I call it again as a Donme Kabbalah. One of the communal leaders of that experience was, for example, Dervish Effendi, Yehuda Lavit Tova, from the late 19th century. He has lots of, Kabbalistic treatises as well as hymns, at least attributed to him. In one of them, for example, he uses a term like, when he refers to Shabtai Tzvi, he refers to him as like a Tzadik Temel del Mundo. This is such a strange construct as you see it. I mean, you have like Tzadik, Hebrew, obviously, meaning saint and virtuous man or wise man. We do have Temel, means like foundation or beginning. And del Mundo, obviously, it's Spanish or Ladino, meaning world. So the whole construct means that, he is the virtuous man who is the foundation of the universe. Okay? So as you see here, Turkish, in addition to Hebrew and Ladino, was becoming part and parcel of this universe, not only at a superficial musical level, but also at a deeper mystical and philosophical level. One would wonder, okay, I mean, what is this Sabbatean Kabbalah all about? As I said, I have a whole chapter on this issue. I'm not going to get into that. But one thing which really is quite striking for me, that I even am not fully grasping, it's one of the mysteries communities. There are like so many discussions about the mystery of Sabbatean Godhead and mystery of Sabbatean faith. Sholem and Yehuda Libes and then many other scholars devoted time on it. But none of them actually are discussing the role of evil in this Donme cosmos. So what would that mean? For that, really, I need to take you to all the way to Gnosticism, even Zoroastrianism, because if you think of the issue of evil coming all the way from those times, and we see here evil is being or becoming part of this Donme Kabbalah as a necessary thing, rather than thinking God or Godhead being all good. We now see evil also becoming part of this whole universe, and which is, I think, quite very important. And normally, when scholars discuss about the Shabbatian mystery of faith or Godhead, they usually concentrate on the question of like they discuss all the like Sephirot universe and cosmos, and then they dwell mostly on Tiferet. And, I'll come to this topic of Tiferet in my next slide too. That Tiferet being God of Israel. But Sabbatian God is not necessarily Tiferet. To me, they concentrate more on Keter, like Ein Sof, and beyond. But again, I just leave it at that. We may talk about it if you have any suggestion or any question about that issue. So we do have now, speaking of, again, Turkification of the ritualistic language, now we do have a very famous Sabbatian hymn, which were now composed in Turkish entirely. Probably it's a song, it's a hymn from 19th century, where we see a hymn devoted to Shabtai, and definitely it's a hymn which is being chanted and probably danced to in those gatherings. If you just look at the last three stanzas, you can see that, it says, Kilipalar ölecek, dünya bize kalacak, Davutlar oynayacak. Meaning the Kilipa, of course, is a term from Lurianic Kabbalah, evil shell, right? And Kilipa also refers to symbolically non-Sabbatians, sometimes to Muslims or Christians, and even to the Jews. Again, anyone who does not believe are or can be, Kilipa. They will perish. The world will be ours. You may think that this is like, yearning for messianic age. And then Davids will dance. People from David's or David's tradition. There's another thing that in Judaism, double Messiah theory. So the people who are coming from the descendants of David will celebrate. But as you see, now they began to kind of express their feelings, religious and otherwise, feelings in Turkish already back in 19th century. And the level of Turkish in their private lives can also be attested, can be confirmed by missionaries in the 19th century. That's another huge subject, that missionary activities among the Donmes and Jews are a huge subject. But interesting thing that, missionaries, especially American missionaries, had lots of interesting activities among them. And then they wrote lots of reports and articles and whatnot about especially Istanbul and Salonika Donme communities. From those accounts, we now learn for sure that they know Turkish very well. if you think of now Donmes being Muslim, right, in public, and Sabatian or Donme in private, in public life, especially if you are a Donme man, right, you need to survive publicly. You need to go out and do business with everyone, and everyone knows you as a Muslim Turk. Therefore, I mean, in public life, in public, you need to know Turkish anyway. You have to use Turkish anyway. Maybe women, since they were more, they live in private homes and they don't have to go out more, their Turkish probably was not that good, but the Turkish of man, like male Turkish, was there. And from those missionary accounts, we know that they go to Turkish school, again, they do business. So by the 19th century, there is no doubt that Turkish was already there as their daily language. Okay, so that daily language is now forcing them, I think, to do things also privately in Turkish too. Mind you, Hebrew and Ladino was still there. So we are now trying to understand how Turkish is becoming kind of their third language, third sacred language. Right. There's this very interesting article written by a missionary whose name was William Schaffler. He's probably the most important one who single-handedly created this mission, American mission to the Jews and Donmes. And here's an article. And the article is about a Donme treatise, a Kabbalistic treatise, a tract, and Schaffler argues that he translated that treatise from Turkish. I mean, I do have some doubts about this issue, but there is still a great chance that he could have translated some part of it from Turkish. And again, wrote an article about it, and I have another article, my article on this issue, and on this is, I hope it's going to come out next year sometimes. But the gist of my paper was that this, perhaps that translation, I mean, Schaffler's translation of that treatise could perhaps be the first full-fledged Donme Kabbalistic treatise, which was produced already in the 19th century. Okay. And I live at that too, at this moment. And to me, again, the 19th century was a time in which they began to produce things in Turkish already. When we come to 19th century, 20th century, now Turkish was everywhere. Not only in their liturgies and daily lives, but as I said, it is becoming now a new sacred language, because some of them obviously cannot keep up with Hebrew and Ladino for generations, and now they have been living in this culture for God knows how many centuries, and Turkish was becoming their own languages. And especially after the establishment of modern Turkey, Ottoman Empire is gone, right? After the end of the World War I, now we do have a Turkish Republic. Then Turkish Republic, what is the major thing about Turkish Republic? It's everything was about Turkish. Okay? I mean, Turkish and Turkification was the essential ideology of the Turkish Republic. Similar to all other nation states, they just pay it like they just emphasize heavily on Turkishness of everything. And Donmes also took the lead, and most of them actually even left their traditions, and they became secular nationalist Turks. Religious Donmes, however, also following the suit and creating texts in Turkish. They are taking notes and composing their communal ordinances, because there were still communities, like sub-communities were still continuing, though they were losing their members to modernity, enlightenment, secularization and whatnot. Still a small and yet dwindling functioning communities were still there in 1920s, 30s and 40s. And now we do have examples from those times where we see now that books were composed in Turkish, books on religious, mystical, historical issues with regard to Sabatianism, written in Turkish by community leaders, community intellectuals, and those texts are circulated among their own members, obviously, and we do have again so many of them today in the hands of some of the families, even if they are not producing the same amount of works today. I can at least tell you that there were good numbers of them from the mid 20th century. Family trees were also kept in Ottoman Turkish and modern Turkish later on, and there are again many like studies and on and about Kabbalah and other mystical issues in Turkish. So, lastly, I would just want to like give you, I show you actually one example from 1940s that was again composed by one of the elders of one of the communities. Okay, this, as you remember, I told you that there were like 3 sub-communities, and now they are practicing or believing or composing different things. So this is an example from 1940s and 50s. It's a book about some of the major issues in Kabbala, including again all the Sephiroths and the role of Messiah, the creation of universe. I mean, you imagine all kind of steamy and juicy subjects are there. It is a very lengthy book, which is still kept in secret. I have a fortune to get some of the images from it. I don't have it all, but if you look at images here, they were written in a typesetting in Turkish, modern Turkish, and there are even symbolisms that you can immediately recognize. This, like obviously Sephiroth, all the Sephiroths, and as you see, the paraphernalias are here. This is like menorahs, and this is kind of ark, almost like this is a Torah scroll. The symbolism of it is there, and again the subject matters are again different issues in Kabbalah. I will give you how or what is so interesting about this. Only one example, and I will conclude my discussion, since I think I'm coming to the end of my my talk. This is I don't know, that's like Sephiroths, and here at the center of Sephir, maybe I can just make this bigger for you a bit. Okay, just a second. I can even do this for you. Okay. There is this whole rereading of Sephiroth here. Okay, that's when I say that there's a Donme Kabbalah, and then they mean something else. They have different interpretations. Just one example. Here, this specific community, which is called the Karakash community, one of the notoriously known Orthodox sub-community of Sabatians or Donmes, they are replacing the God of Israel. Traditionally, it is believed that he lives in Tiferet here at the center of Sephiroth, which connects everything, right? They are putting their own leader, whose name was Osman Baba, in Tiferet. And they are thinking that he is the one, basically, which connects the whole Tiferet, or his Sephirotic world and universe. Okay. And in this scheme, Shabtai Tzvi is actually dwelling not at the center, but here in Malakut. He's someone who's connecting whole cosmos, universal, heavenly cosmos, to Malachut, to Shekhinah, to the world that we live in. Okay. But the central role here, as you see, is not necessarily given to Shabtai Tzvi or even Shekhinah, but to Osman Baba, who dwells here in Tiferet as being the beauty, the truth. Okay. So this is just one example to show you how they are kind of interpreting and reinterpreting some of the essential Kabbalistic concepts in their own universe. So by way of concluding, there's another example that shows that there are other community, people who are coming from this tradition, producing things in Ottoman Turkish already, not only modern Turkish, but also Ottoman Turkish too. But I'm not going to dwell on that too. But these examples from different centuries shows us, if I reiterate my argument from the beginning, shows us that Turkish, Ottoman Turkish first and the modern Turkish later, became part and parcel of this Donme universe slowly but surely. And in addition to, again, Hebrew and Ladino, Turkish emerged as a new sacred language in this small functioning community today. So what is future? That is, for the time being, unknown. And by way of concluding, I should also say thank you. And I stop here and get your comments and questions if there is time for that.
Thank you very much. Maybe a question to speaker. Do you know Hebrew or only English?
Yeah, English question would be nice. I mean, if there is any question in Hebrew, I mean, I can get something, but I would appreciate the translation if there is any. Mark.
Hi, Cengiz, thank you very much for your lecture, and it was very interesting and very illuminating. Though I have my own question, which is like probably not at the core of your argument, but as a scholar of Cardozo, I'm interested in this depiction of Shabtai Tzvi as Malchut, because this depiction actually was developed by Cardozo. He writes about it in his Drush Treine Masichin. And I was interested, like how Cardozo was incorporated in this tradition, because like looks like it's something very strange. On one hand, Cardozo was so against to think that Mashiach could become part of deity, and on the other hand, he just provided to Donme the intellectual framework to do so. So I'm interested, like, can you tell more about how
Cardozo
was? Yes, and maybe he was translated in Turkish, and maybe his terms and his takes on Raza de Manuta, which is sacred of faith, was somehow translated in Turkish. I'm so very interested to hear about it. I'm very sorry that my question does not deal with the heart of your argument, but just I'm thinking the nice part that I want to eat. Thank you so very much again for your lecture.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, Cardozo, legacy of Cardozo is, as you know, it's contested. But Cardozo, yes, he was against the whole idea of conversion, and then he was even claiming that all the converts were indeed inspired by Satan, right, devil. But I mean, in the Donme framework, maybe that's not necessarily so bad thing, because again, devil or evil was part of their Kabbalistic universe anyway. But that's one thing. Secondly, I mean, Cardozo spent a good time, even after the death of Shabtai Tzvi, he spent a great amount of time among the Donmes. He did not convert. He even tried not to, he tried people not to convert, but he spent the time like in Salonika and Istanbul and all other different parts of Ottoman Empire back then. He even, legend has it that he even married to the widow of Shabtai Tzvi. Okay, he was there. I mean, but his idea of this necessary evil probably became like, Shabtai Tzvi had to convert because of this as a necessary evil. I think that was one of the main things that played a role in the formation of Donme Kabbalah, or the fact that he was even fighting against the whole idea of conversion did help people to hone their argument. When they are like discussing or rebuttaling against him, they had to like develop new ideas. But again, during the formative period, both Nathan and Cardozo were there. Again, I do have another long chapter. I mean, I can send you my long chapter on Cardozo section where I discuss more about his ideas and how it was being integrated to Donme tradition. Okay.
Thank you so very much.